Alright, so I'm going to give a quick overview of the motherboard that we're going to use for the build. This is the Acer Veriton motherboard. This is the DTX variant, so it is ATX this way, well, ATX or micro ATX length this way, and then DTX expanded down, which means you only have 2 expansion slots. So our GPU is going to be here facing downwards, which means that we're not going to block this 1x PCI Express. You also have front panel USB 3.0 here, SATA 3, SATA 2 for a combination of 4 ports, front audio down here for your case, and then on the back we have a pretty full featured I/O, PS2 mouse and keyboard, COM port, we're not going to use that. These onboard displays we're not going to use. We have 2 DisplayPort and a DVI. We're not going to use those at all because we're going to use our GPU. USB 3, USB 2, Ethernet, and rear audio. Giving you an overview of the rest of the board, here's the CPU socket. We have 4 DIMM slots. We can go up to 32 gig of RAM. That should be more than plenty. 16 gig would be a good amount too. So if we want to expand from R2 sticks to 16 gig, we can do that. And then we have our 24-pin ATX connector and 4-pin CPU power right here. Here's the fan header for the CPU. It's a 4-pin PWM header. So as you saw in the introductory video, I have this processor that's from a different build. It was actually cheaper for me to buy the entire build and then take the processor out of it. So it's already got thermal paste on it, and what I'm going to do is clean it up with a paper towel and a little bit of 91% rubbing alcohol. I use just a very little bit, and it'll come right off. It's looking pretty good. Just gonna touch it up a little bit. If you get to this point, it's really not necessary to do anything else, especially because we're not going to be overclocking. Alright, so we're gonna install the processor, install the RAM, and then we'll move on to the CPU cooler. I like to do the processor first because I don't want the RAM to be in the way of me working on the CPU socket. This is a plastic cover that just protects the socket. It's easy enough. Leave the cover on, and then what we're going to do is push down this little retaining arm, pull away from the socket, lift it up, and then you can actually follow it back. If you can see the processor, let me see if I can get my camera to focus here. There's 2 little notches on either side, here and here, and there's a gold triangle in the corner. This motherboard has a white triangle in this corner and then notches on the top. So that's the way the processor goes. So we're just going to set it down gently. And then close the lid. Make sure this goes underneath the retaining screw. And that CPU cover will just pop off as soon as we push this latch down. It's that easy. RAM is even easier. You want to take a look at the board manual, or actually on the board itself, to see which slots are your primary slots. The text on this motherboard is a little hard to read because it's very, very small. What you want to look for is something that says DIMM A, B, C, or D, since we have 4, or in this case DIMM 1 through 4. DIMM 1 and 3 are going to be the main ones, and in this case it's this blue one and this blue one. You want to match the colors, generally speaking. You can see down there it says DIMM 3, that means it's this one here, and then right between this and this DIMM there's a little line of text that says DIMM 1. So there's a short side and a long side to the RAM, and same thing here, the short side and long side. All you have to do is pull the tabs out. We're going to take our RAM, 1 stick at a time, line it up vertically, set it down, and then you want to start with the short side and then work on the long side. We're going to take the short side and push it down, and you hear that white clip snap in on its own. Same thing with the other slot. Start with the short side and then the long side. That's as far as we can get without the CPU cooler, so we're going to go ahead and take care of that next. So it turns out before we install our CPU cooler, we have to remove this mounting bracket that's semi-permanently attached to this motherboard. This is different than a Xeon mounting bracket. Those are metal and are integral to the design of the motherboard. This one is not. So I'm going to flip this over to show you that this is a plastic mounting bracket. It just simply has some glue or like tape, double-sided tape underneath this bracket here. There's only one safe way to remove this bracket, and it doesn't involve prying underneath it with a screwdriver. You don't want to do that because that will damage the traces around the motherboard. Basically, you won't be able to fix it. So what we're going to do is push through the bracket here with these standoffs and gently work the glue off, and then we can use our fingers on the back side and pull it through. Be patient and take your time while doing it. I'm going to do it off camera just because it's going to be a pain to do it. So I'll see you after it's done. Alright, so I got the bracket off. This is what the motherboard looks like. It just has 4 holes here. And then now we can use whatever heatsink bracket you want, or if you want to use the push pin style cooler like an Intel stock cooler, you can use that as well. This is what the bracket looks like on the back, and you can see that there's some residue, tape. And then there's a little bit of tape here on the motherboard too, and you can work it off and peel it off. But I'm not too concerned about it because it's going to go in the case and it's going to stay there. And this isn't going to touch anything anyway. So I'll just leave this as it is. And then now we're ready to install our CPU cooler. This is the Thermaltake Gravity i2. I'm actually not going to use this for this build. I reminded myself that I need this for a different build. But it's very simple design, and all you have to do is put the back plate on the back of the motherboard and then screw these 4 screws down, and that's how you install it. So I'm not going to really go over that, but I've seen quite a few people install these incorrectly, so I think this is a good time for me to show you how to install one. This is a Intel stock heatsink. You can get these for like $3 on eBay. It's adequate. It might be a little loud, but it should work. That's really all we need. This one's been used, so I'm going to repaste it. I'm not too worried about the paste that's on here. It seems very, very thin, and I think this is actually G-Lid GC Extreme that I used before. So I'm just going to add a little bit of GC Extreme to the CPU here. A little bit goes a very long way, and that should be more than plenty. So with this stock heatsink, you have 4 push pins, and they have a little arrow that's on each pin and a section where you can put a flathead screwdriver if you want to. You really shouldn't need to because these are pretty easy to use without one. But the gist of it is that the arrow is the direction that you turn when you want to remove the heatsink. It is not the direction you need to turn it to install it. So as you can see, these are already turned, and what we need to do is turn them back before we install it. If you get a new one of these are already in the correct position. This is the correct position for installing the heatsink with the arrow facing outward. It's very simple to install it. Line it up with the 4 holes. What you want to do is make sure that it's kind of sitting how you see it now. And I'm not going to clamp them down yet. I'm going to hold this here with my thumb and show you the back side. Each one of these is just barely poking through. And that's how you're going to have it on all 4 holes. So it's really simple. It's even easier than many people make it. All you have to do is just take your finger like this and click that one down, or any of them down. And then you want to go to the opposite side and click that one down. And you're listening for 2 clicks. The first one might go in with just 1, but there's 1 and there's that second click. Now I'm just going to take the wire. I removed it from the mount here, and I'm just going to sort of route it around one of these pins just so it routes a little nicer. And that's how you install an Intel stock heatsink. So that is the motherboard section done. Now we can install this into the case, install our power supply, install our GPU, solid state, and hard drive, and then we can install Windows and get this thing running.